Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Talking Brazil Ball. It's that time of week again, George.
Yeah, hello, James. It is. You're right. It's that time of week again.
Yep, time for some Talking Brazil Ball. How have you been doing this week?
Yeah. All right, James. It comes round quickly, doesn't it? These episodes, and also it's a bumper game week between now and the next one as well. So plenty of football to enjoy over the next few days. Up until the weekend, it's chock-a-block with games in Serie A. So let's wait and see.
That's enough of that. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Since we last spoke, as we said on the last episode, there's been two full, or not full, 1.5, wasn't it, really, since we last did the last episode. There was half a game week, which we didn't cover in the previous episode, which was completed. And then there was another full round of fixtures, which was a heck of a round, really. There was so many goals. I think we totted them up just now, didn't we? There was 31 goals over the 10 games. So, you do your maths, that's an average of just over 3 goals a game, which is pretty good going. And typically you managed to get the one that had 8 goals in at all, did you?
Unbelievable, James. Every single other game had at least one goal in it, but the one that I, went for. So there you go. What can you do? You can't see into the future.
They had at least 2 goals in. I think the lowest scoring one was a 1-1 draw. So there was at least 2 goals in every other game, but yeah, like you say, you can't predict the future. It looked like a good game on paper, did Vasco Cruzeiro. But anyway, that's all to come. For the time being, do you want to just run through the results, George? So like I said, there was 1.5 game weeks since we did last do the Talking Brazil Ball. So do you just want to go through? So the last one we covered was, I think it was Red Bull Bragantino 1, Gallo 2, wasn't it? So from Thursday the 13th of June, there was 6 more fixtures, wasn't there? And then there's the round that we're going to look at. So do you want to run through all the results there, and then we'll kind of get into them all?
Yeah, well, again, it would be a pleasure of mine, James. So, like you said, we, starting to finish off match day 10 was Thursday the 13th of June, Cruzeiro 2, Cuiabá 1, into Friday the 14th of June, Atletico Paranaense 3, Criciúma 1, Flamengo 2, Grêmio 1, Inter 0, Sao Paulo 0, Bahia 1, Fortaleza 0, Palmeiras 2, Vasco 0. And then Saturday the 15th of June, start of Matchday 11, RB Bragantino 2, Juventude 1, Fluminense 1, Atletico Go 2, Atletico Paranaense 1, Flamengo 1, Corinthians 2, Sao Paulo 2, Vitória 2, Inter 1, Criciúma 2, Bahia 2, Cuiabá 5, James Fortaleza 0, Grêmio 1, Botafogo 2, Vasco da Gama 0, Cruzeiro 0, and Galo 0, Palmeiras 4. Disappointment for me. And what a way to lose your first game of the season. But we'll talk about that one later, James. That concludes the match day. That was this morning, very, very early hours of this morning, UK time.
Yeah, so a lot of games to get into there. As we said, we're only going to cover that match day 11, as it were. It was more like match day 9 for a lot of teams, and less again for some of them. Still, we're trying to catch up from the backlog of fixtures that were missed due to the weather conditions in the Rio Grande do Sul, but things are back on track. So again, our matches of the week, giving it away a little bit. Well, people should know anyway if they listened last week. So George, you were covering the Vasco Cruzeiro game, which on paper looked like a decent kind of matchup. Cruzeiro going relatively well, Vasco kind of less so, but still, we're interested to see how they get on under the new coach, aren't we? On the back of obviously a massive defeat in the derby against Flamengo the last time we spoke about them, and they also lost to Palmeiras 2-0, didn't they? So what did you kind of take away from this one? I know obviously no goals, but still perhaps some notable consequences.
Well, in all honesty, James, not a great deal actually, And I was sort of interested to look a bit more at Cruzeiro, but as it was, there was just not much to look at all in the end. A lot of it, it boiled down to I think the goalkeeper of Cruzeiro having a little bit of a good game. Vasco had the better of it. If you have a look at the stats, although they have a better XG, 1.10 to Cruzeiro's 0.21. 8 shots in all for Cruzeiro, only 2 on target. They didn't play well, really. I don't think Cruzeiro in this one. Vasco again stopped the rot of 2 defeats, but the manager still, Alvaro Pacheco, he's still waiting for his first win. They actually came out to boos and jeers, James, through the when the teams came out for the warm-ups. The fans aren't happy at all at Vasco with their team, to be honest with you, and they didn't get much in terms of much to shout about in this one. But there is one thing to shout about for Vasco now, James. Philip Coutinho has now signed.
Oh, has he?
Yeah, so I think he signed today. From what I can gather, but I'm not entirely sure. As you know, these things are a little bit hazy, aren't they? But I think he has signed today. There's a picture of him with a holding up a Vasco shirt. I think he has signed, and that was from earlier on today. So yeah, I think he has signed. So hopefully he breathes a bit of life into them, because they aren't. Like we know, change of manager, they are struggling to kind of win games now, and no win, since mid-May. I think that is their only one of 2 of the season so far from 9 games now. They're sitting a point adrift of the relegation zone, and Cruzeiro just seem to, bump along, draw a lot of games. It seems, win narrowly. They're not a very exciting team. I don't think we've really touched on them at all, much, James, at all. And to be honest, the manager Fernando Sibra, Brazilian man, but I think more Vasco. I did a bit more looking at what Vasco was thinking about this one, but in all, they are missing a few players. For the game against Juventud on Thursday, a couple of Vergetti's missing, and he's a very, very big miss, and as is Dimitri Payet. So they're both missing, and I just don't know. They don't really seem to be able. Like I said, fans are not happy at all, and they don't seem to be getting any kind of momentum, and they're sitting narrowly above the relegation zone. It just doesn't look good. And I think, as far as Cruzeiro are concerned, it was probably an okay kind of point in the end. They didn't play well, but they managed to get something out of it. Didn't concede a goal. They're sitting sort of mid-table, not that far off the top. They're probably quite pleased with how they've started. In all honesty,
it's interesting that they're booing the team there, because relatively they're not in that bad a straits, really. It's not. I know they had a battering from Flamengo, but relatively you kind of expect that from the two teams, really. So it seems surprising to me, especially given that the manager's so new, that they're having those troubles really amongst the fans. It seems a little bit kind of premature, really, for that. But it doesn't sound as though Pacheco's going to be long for it if that kind of continues.
I think they'll give him another 3 or 4 games, maybe, and then if they haven't won a game, I think that'll be curtains for him, to be honest. To be fair, he has opened with a couple of really difficult games against Flamengo and away at Palmeiras. So, I think this was a little bit of what they can kind of expect maybe under him. And to be honest, I don't think they did play that badly. I think they were just people are getting a bit frustrated, because they haven't won for a few. They had a draw with Fortaleza in the cup, couple of defeats and another draw, no wins in 4 in all competitions, and like I said, only 2 wins altogether all season, one of which was on the first game of the season. So they're not winning many. You can kind of understand it. A couple of thumpings in there as well. So
Mm.
it doesn't look like it's going too well for them, if I'm honest. And I don't think it'll last that much longer. Like we know,
Does
they don't give them too long, do they? And I'm interested to see how he does. Obviously, he hasn't started too well. He's missing key players like Vergetti and Payet, who knows how long for. Juventud, if they can win that one, they bounce up to mid-table. But, it changes so quickly, doesn't it?
Well, Coutinho should hopefully give him a bit of a boost. Vergetti, it's a shame that if he's injured or suspended or something, because he's been a real bright spot. He's been one of the top scorers in the division. He might even be the top scorer. He's got 4, I think, in 9. He's been on a decent run. And they've also got a fella here he's just called JP. He doesn't have any other name, at least not on FOTMob from what I can see. He's just called JP. And he's midfielder for Vasco. He's only 19. He's played 2 games now. He started on the weekend. It was his first start for them, and he's come through the youth academy. So I don't know if he's maybe one to keep an eye on, but yeah, he's doesn't seem to go by any other name but JP. I don't know if you can see.
It's a strange one. They've also got, of course, Rayan, the 17-year-old, who seems to be, having a little bit, of a introduction into Serie A this season as well. He's another one to maybe keep an eye on. JP come through the youth there. Who knows what's going on with his name. I mean, it definitely won't be JP, but there you go. I don't know. I mean, who knows? They do tend to mess about with the names a bit, don't they, sometimes? And, they have all sorts of different, variations to names, don't they? So who knows what his name is? Anybody listening, if they know what his name is, let us know.
JP, yeah. Well, that sounds like a good roundup. I think of probably a game that you were cursing the choice of really at the end of it. But is there anything else you'd like to point out from the game? Cruzeiro's still in a decent position, like you say. They're only 5 points off the top with a game in hand. They haven't been, winning big really, but they've been kind of hanging in there.
Yeah, I think Cruzeiro, like I said, they'll be relatively happy with how I don't think it sounded like they didn't play too well, so they'll be relatively happy coming out of that game with a draw. No goals conceded, just roll on to the next one. Like we know now, they're coming thick and fast, these matches, and, you just got to turn around and get ready for another one. It's a game which they'll be thinking they can win at home next time round. So, it's a game that against Fluminense where they'll probably look at it and say, hey, we can get something from this game. So, yeah, we'll wait to see.
Yeah, well, Fluminense will probably touch on them later on, but it was another shocking result for them, really. But anyway, going from one kind of goal depraved to a goal kind of fest for me. I took the Clásico Majestoso this weekend. So that was the Sao Paulo derby between Corinthians and Sao Paulo, the 2 best supported teams in Sao Paulo. So it's always bound to be a big game. And it didn't it lived up to expectations, which so many of these games often don't really. But it was all 4 goals actually came in the first half of this game. So it was a real goal fest early on, and 3 really good goals as well. It has to be said, 3 of the 4 were brilliant, including the 2 goals for Corinthians were fantastic. Coronado kind of cut in onto his right foot from the left and bent it in, and then Mosquito kind of did exactly the same, virtually the same on the other side, turned in onto his left and bent it round past the goalkeeper. So 2 really good goals for Corinthians, and one really good goal, at least for Sao Paulo, which was Lucas Moura, who, if you watch the highlights back, George, he was absolutely tearing Corinthians apart for an early part of this game. I mean, he scores the goal, which is a nice kind of give and go, and then a nice little kind of dink finish. But he also kind of did a really impressive, like a solo run, and brought a really good save out of Carlos Miguel in the goal. So he looked like he was really enjoying himself. He did a little jig when he scored his goal. He seems to be, back home, obviously, and in a big game, in a derby game, kind of coming up trumps, and he seems to have kicked things up a bit this season, Lucas Moura. So good for him to turn up for Sao Paulo, and good for them to kind of get a good point in the end of what could have been obviously could have been more, but it was back and forth. It wasn't, they didn't go 2 up. It was 1-0 Sao Paulo very early on. Corinthians then went 1-1. Then it was 2-1 to Sao Paulo, and then it was 2-2 just before half time. So I don't know if you saw any of those goals, or if you had any observations about that kind of first half of football, which was pretty manic by the looks of it.
Oh yeah, James. Some really good goals, like you say, Lucas Moura, fabulous goal. Like you said, he looked a bit of a handful for the Corinthians defence. And he's really got his mojo back, like you said, back at home. Looks like he's enjoying his football again. So he's a good player. That was a really good signing for them. Taking a little bit of time maybe to get used to it again, but he's now, coming. He's now coming good again. Obviously, Kaká with another own goal, 2-2. The bit, it was a deflection. It was unlucky, that one. Obviously, Corinthians down to 10 men as well. But yeah,
go on.
I really like that mosquito goal. It was just like a turn, like it kind of bopped up for him at the right sort of height, and he just kind of thought, well, you know what, I'm going to hit it. He sort of swiveled and into the top corner. I thought that was really good. Also, I think a first start for Moscardo in the middle of Corinthians as well. So, like you said last week, James, one to keep an eye on for him. And again, we were talking about shirts, weren't we, earlier on just now. I like this Corinthians one, this sort of faded number, that they're wearing. So, I do like that one.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it is. It's a nice shirt. It's an interesting one. I'm not sure the reception on it because it's a bit different in terms of a Corinthian shirt. But yeah, there was a lot to take out of this game. Really. That Kaká own goal, like you say, incredibly unlucky. But how often do you see a player score 2 own goals in consecutive weeks? I suppose there was a game in between, wasn't there? But 2 own goals in 3 games at the very least. And I mean, you scored 2 in one game, I think, didn't you? Once, memorably.
I think actually. James, I think I actually got a hat trick one time.
Nah, I don't think so. Nah, I think
sure.
that's. I think you're
definitely. Yeah. I definitely got 2, but again, it was like Kaká, just unfortunate being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Come off the attacker, come off you, and then into the net. So yeah, scored plenty of own goals. Nearly sort of Jamie Carragher levels, possibly.
Well, yeah, Carragher was one who got his fair share. I'm sure if he sees Kaká, he'll be offering some sympathies. But yeah, Coronado as well. I know you mentioned the mosquito goal. Coronado's goal was nice, and he actually said afterwards that he was being applauded by Jonathan Calleri, who's the Sao Paulo centre forward. After the game, said or after the goal, even possibly said, well done, mate, great goal. It was his first goal in Serie A for Corinthians. He joined from Al Ittihad, interestingly, in the I think it was in the new year, basically. So, want to keep an eye on him. Interesting kind of career he's had there and come into Brazil. But also the game was notable just for a real flashpoint as well in it, which was the Corinthians goalkeeper, so Carlos Miguel, who looks like he's on the way to Nottingham Forest, actually, George. I don't know if you've seen that, but he's a goalkeeper who we spoke about earlier on in the season because he'd come in for Casio, obviously club legend, and they dropped him for whatever reason, and Carlos Miguel had come in, and he was looking shaky, to be honest. He was looking like he had a long way to go to be a first choice keeper at this level, but he has become the first choice anyway. He's not played a lot of football. He's 25 years old, but he is going to Nottingham Forest, by the looks of things, unless anything drastic happens. He will be moving to Forest. So Corinthians are actually bringing the Fortaleza goalkeeper in, Santos, it looks like, who is the backup at Fortaleza, I think. So it's a step down for them. I think Casio is still at the club, actually, but I think his bridges have been burned a little. But Carlos Miguel, anyway, after I don't know whether it was after a goal or it was just kind of a flashpoint in the game, but there was a bit of a scuffles between the two sets of players, and it was Calleri again actually involved, Jonathan Calleri, and Carlos Miguel took issue with him, and he comes over and he just pushes him to the ground, and there's a bit of a kind of an afterwards, a kind of argy-bargy and stuff, and I think he got into it a bit with Luciano Neves, our friend Luciano Neves. Couldn't finish into a sock.
Has he been practicing his finishing?
Well, he's been practicing summit because I think they got into a bit of an argy-bargy, and after the game, Carlos Miguel posted on Instagram, as the players do, to celebrate a win, or great 3 points, lads, or whatever the generic post is, and but he put a post up and he tagged in the picture that there was Caleri in the back. Oh no, sorry, it was Neves in the background, Luciano, and he tagged him as what was it, Sucker? It was Sucker in Brazilian. So instead of putting the tag on him, he put Sucker. So Luciano Neves obviously wasn't happy, saw it, and he instead posted a picture of him holding the Copa do Brazil from last year, and with a whole list of his stats at Sao Paulo, how many goals and how many games, and then he put like a goalkeeper with 10 professional appearances with a laughing emoji. So obviously pointing at Carlos Miguel and his lack of experience for Corinthians.
Wow.
He didn't then mention him specifically, but that was the kind of the inference. So yeah, there's a bit of a it's a derby game after all, isn't it? You don't mind seeing that kind of a thing. But if you go and watch the footage, Carlos Miguel, I mean, he looks like a giant amongst the players. He really is a big fellow, and he comes across. He's head and shoulders above everybody. He looks enormous in this footage. So be interesting to see him in the Premier League, how he gets on. I don't know if he's going to be first choice at Forest or whether he'll come and play backup for a bit. But only 25, young for a goalkeeper. But to me, he doesn't look particularly secure, but he's obviously got a bit of personality.
Yeah, it sounds like a bit of a character, doesn't he, James? Does that come out today, then, that one about
no,
it's
been brewing for a few days or a week, maybe. It's not confirmed yet, but it looks pretty nailed on that he will be going to Forest. So, yeah. So,
James, I'd just like to sorry to interrupt you, but you talked about Igor Coronado. Coronado, who scored in this game. Now, I don't know, but he has had a spell in England, James, this fella. Now, this is incredibly random, really, but he must have spent some time in England as a young player, because he joined the academy of MK Dons at the age of 15. Never played a game. He just got close enough to the first team, a substitute in the final game of the 10-11 season against Oldham Athletic.
Gosh.
And also went on to Grasshoppers before being released and having a brief spell again in England with 7th tier side Banbury United.
Goodness me.
So now he's playing in Serie A for Corinthians in his home country, Brazil. So what a rise that is, really. Lots of time in Italy, and like you said, he had in Saudi. He's been in UAE as well, and all over the place.
Yeah, I'm just reading about him. So he moved to the UK when he was 15. His parents relocated for work, apparently. So then, yeah, he's had a heck of a journey. He came through the ranks with Dele Alli, apparently. So
yes, he would have done in that way. So yeah, that's just interesting. But yeah, I just thought I'd give you that little tidbit on him before you went on.
That's great. That's a great tidbit. Well done. Yeah, we'll see how he gets on. Then it was a really good goal. So hopefully he can kick on from there. That's one to certainly keep an eye on. Igor Coronado. So just before I finish on this one, I just wanted to mention about Sao Paulo, because we've touched on Corinthians there quite a bit. They're doing quite well now. They're up to 5th. They're having a really solid season, and actually they're doing that well that Zubeldia, the manager, is still unbeaten as the manager at Sao Paulo, and that's 12 games now, George, that he's been unbeaten for, and that's the 5th longest record in Sao Paulo history, and it beats the record of Dorival Jr., of course, the cup-winning manager who is now the Brazil national team manager, who went 11 games unbeaten during his spell in charge this time last year. So Zubeldia has beaten that, and actually, you look at the records that are in front of him now, and they're all pretty long records. So the best record is 18. That's the number to beat, and that was set in 1930. So it was a long time ago. And the 3 others ahead of him were in 1931, 32, and 1986. So it's the best record since 1986. So 37 years now. So that's a heck of a stat, really, for Zubeldia, and it just shows what a job he's done since he's come into Sao Paulo to replace Carpini, who obviously has turned up again now at, where is he, Vittoria, is he?
Vittoria. Yeah,
So
Vittoria, yeah.
a good result for him this weekend. But yeah,
Oh, fantastic, yeah.
Zubeldia is doing a super job. The 4 points off the top in 5th place. They've got a real shot, I think, at just staying in there. And if they can get a player like Mora kind of firing, then he could be a difference maker for them.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like I said, I think Mora is a real difference maker, and he started the season, pretty well. I know he's only got 2 goals, but he's only played 3 games.
Yeah.
And, it's he's starting to come good really after coming there in August of last year. He's been there nearly a year, hasn't really got going. I think he probably had a few injuries, didn't he, in his time there, but yeah, he's had a decorated career, really. I mean, only 3 teams he's played for, but, established European sides and plenty of appearances for both of PSG and Spurs. So, he's no mug, and I think he'll, him on form is a really, really, really good player at this level. And I know it seems like perhaps Luciano Neves seems to have a little bit of an attitude issue. I think we've spoken about him before in terms of flashpoints. I think you have, James. It was a game with Fluminense, wasn't he? He had a flashpoint with Denise, didn't he? So maybe he's got a little bit of an issue with his temperament, but he, on his day, I think, can be a good player and a threat. There's Corelli as well, who is very, very well travelled player and everything like that. So they've got some good players in there, some mixed with some youth players as well, like all these teams have. But you know what? I like them, and I like Zubeldia. He looks like he's doing a good job, and I'm rooting for them really.
Yeah, they are for sure. It's all shaping up nicely for them. Obviously, would have perhaps liked to win in this one, but away at the rivals and Majestoso rivals, I think a point's usually a decent result. But anyway, that's the games of the week. We must push on because we do have awards to give out. So let's probably start with the player of the round, I think. This one was relatively straightforward this week. It isn't always. But I just want to give a shout out to a player just before we do go on to the actual player of the round, because I wanted to talk about Cuiabá a little bit. And I just wanted to highlight the left back, Ramon, who is quite young, 23 years old. He's not I think he scored last week, didn't he? He got his first ever professional goal, and he didn't know how to celebrate. That was him, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Against Krituma, he didn't know what to do. And, well, he got another one, George, this week, and it was a heck of a goal that he got as well. From a corner, I think it got headed out, and he chests it up, and then he just wraps his left foot around it. But it's a real, like a bullet, but he kind of guides it inside the post, and it's a heck of a goal. He got an assist during the game as well. And I think I just wanted to mention him because he was in the running for the player of the round. He was probably a little unlucky to miss out in the end, but he was one who had a great game. And obviously Cuiabá now, 11 goals in the last 3 games. They've scored 5 in 2 of the last 3 games. They look fully back now from a really tricky start, and Petit, the manager, has got them going great guns.
Oh, Petit's come in. Obviously, took a little bit of time to get going, but now, James, they're rolling, aren't they? They're only a point above the relegation zone, but they're on the upward trajectory, aren't they? Definitely. Like I said, 11 goals amazingly in the last 3 games. They couldn't buy a goal in the first kind of 6 or 7 games. 6 games or so. They've not scored. They're not scored for 6 games. And now they've scored 11 in 3 games. I mean, there's just like a light switch has gone off and it's just exploded for them all. There was some really nice goals. That Ramon goal was probably the pick of them. But, we like Pitta now, don't we, on here? And it was a lovely goal, a little bit of nice turn of pace, wasn't it, to beat the defender? And he finished it off nicely. So he added another one to his tally. Obviously, there was a silly red card, I think, in there. Well, there was 2. They finished with 9 men, didn't they, in the end? They actually had to play the whole of the second half with 9 men. So, it just fell flat if it hadn't already. They were already 4-0 down. So, oh, sorry, they were already 3-0 down at the point that they got 2 men sent off.
Well, it wasn't just that. I mean, I don't know exactly what happened. I didn't see, but the Renato Kaiser, the Fortaleza player, got sent off, having come on as a substitute. I think he got sent off, and Petit actually got sent off. The Cuiabá manager, and Emmanuel Brites of Fortaleza got a yellow and a red at the same time. Obviously, there was some kind of a flashpoint. I don't know what happened, but two Fortaleza players have been sent off, and the Cuiabá manager's been given his marching orders at the same time. And then Pitta went and scored just a few minutes later. And like you say, it was a heck of a finish. He takes it really well, and he's been in great form ever since you kind of called him a lump up top. So he's really letting you have it, isn't he? But yeah, we like him now. Clayton got another. Cafu got a couple of assists, got another goal. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on Cuiabá just before we name the player of the round, because they have really turned things around. And Fortaleza, unfortunately, having gone unbeaten for such a long time, they've lost the last two now, back-to-back defeats, no goals. They went the first 6 games without defeat. They've lost the last 2, but I think they've reverted to the mean a little bit mid-table. So not too much to worry about, perhaps, but that was a real thumping for them. But anyway, player of the round, George. Do you want to introduce him this week?
Yeah, I can do, James. And it's a player that I think scored in last week as well. So he didn't. He assisted in the game last week. A team that we gave the goal of the round to last week, James. It's a player for Red Bull Bragantino. Again, the name of Helio Junior. What a name! A 24-year-old Brazilian winger, primarily right winger. Scored a couple of goals in their win over Juventude on Saturday night.
Yeah, he did. He got both goals and they won 2-1. I think the player of the round was a relatively straightforward one this time, Helio Junior. The only player to score more than once. And it wasn't just that. He scored, I can't remember if it was his first one or his second one. I think it was his first one, wasn't it? And it was very early on into the game, 3 minutes in. And this was a real contender for goal of the round because he gets it on the right-hand side. Like you say, he tends to play on the right as a left footer, and I think he nutmegs a fella, didn't he? Or he beat a man nicely down the left and he cuts inside, and then he just dinks a finish over the keeper. It's kind of a cross, but it's very deliberately a shot, and he just curls it in over the goalkeeper into the far post. And I just thought it was a brilliant, nonchalant kind of finish. And then he went on and added the winner just 7 minutes before the end. So we haven't really touched too much on Red Bull Bragantino, really, this during the kind of the series, because they seem to get a win and then they get a loss and then a draw, and they don't seem to really do a heck of a lot, but they seem to hang around the kind of continental finish places. But only 4 points off the top, they're quietly going about the business pretty well. Helio Junior kind of deserved winner, I think, this time.
Yeah, like you said, James, there wasn't too much in terms of, for the other two awards. There's been a heck of a debate going on. There's been plenty of contenders and stuff. But to be fair, for the player of the round, yeah, it was pretty straightforward in the end. And, he's been there since November of 2020 as junior, 165 appearances. He came through at Sao Paulo, still only 24 years old. And let's see, like you said, Bragantino, a little bit under the radar. They do seem to just win, lose, win a couple in a row, and just go on about it without it being too much of a, of a sort of a showcase thing. But they were down to 10. They had to play a lot of the game with 10 men here. And also the young lad Gustavino, he supplied that goal that you talked about, James, the first goal in the 3rd minute. He was sacrificed for Douglas Mendes, for a defender, in the 16th minute of the game after Jadson had been sent off. So, they showed some steel there to come, even to as Juventude equalised it. They had the bottle to go back and win it late on in the game. So fair play to them. And their coach, actually, he did end up getting a red card as well, right at the end of the game as well, Pedro Caxia. So yeah, Reds all the way round the grounds this week, wasn't it?
There was a heck of a lot of Reds and a heck of a lot of Reds for coaches as well, and one for a couple for substitutes as well, actually, which I'll talk about a little bit later on, which was a bit of a big talking point. But yeah, very good for them to have such a big amount of the game with 10 men, and to see off a Juventude side who've been in decent form and are no mugs themselves. So yeah, a big win, and obviously Pedro Caixinha probably at the end just a bit, let it get to him a little bit, and I don't know what he's done, but he's obviously been sent off. But anyway, player of the round there, Helio Junior, 2 goals, 2 good goals, 1 stunning goal really, 24, and another player to keep an eye on. So well done to him. He's the player of the round. But we will move on quickly, George, because like you say, there was more contenders for both of the other awards, really. So let's look first at the young player of the round, I reckon, because there was a few less contenders for that, but there were a couple nonetheless. Were interestingly, we're always trying to pick the young player, and it's sometimes difficult if nobody quite steps up to the plate. But they did this week. I think four, I think, under 21 players scored in the end. Yep, at least 4 anyway. So we had a few in the running, didn't we, this week?
Oh yeah, James. There was a little bit, like I said, a little bit of a debate going on who's going to win this one this time, and like I said, a few players of 21 or under scored for their clubs, and in the end, it was difficult to choose. And I think in the end, we've reluctantly gone for somebody that potentially we might not wanted to go for, but we have in the end because of a certain thing that he did in the game.
Well, let's go through some of the contenders first. So we had a goal for Flamengo, Everton Araujo, a 21-year-old, got a goal with a head, an equaliser to get them a point against Atletico Paranense, which is a big point really because it keeps Flamengo top of the table.
Well, that was right. That was right. There was loads of late drama. No, they're not in the Botafogo at top, but there was loads of late drama in this one, wasn't there, James? Fernandinho got the late penalty in the 92nd minute, and then Araujo with a header from the corner in the 99th minute. So yeah, rescued a point. Fair play to him, but it was a relatively straightforward one in the end, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, so he was one of the contenders. A good point, probably more so for Atletico Paranense, but like you say, very, very late on, rescued it at the death. So a good moment for him. There was also a very good moment for the man who I really was leaning towards giving it to up until this morning, which was Cuyabano, the left back for Botafogo, who is. Actually, I don't know if you remember, George, but he was my pick as a young player at Gremio at the start of the season, which was wrong on dodgy tip on 2 counts. In that one, he left Gremio, a couple of weeks later, I think, and 2, what was our second point? I had a second point. Anyway, I can't remember, but it was an erroneous tip because he the second point was because there was a better young player at Gremio who also scored. But Cuyabano, he got the goal against Gremio, his old team. He didn't celebrate, George. You'll be interested to hear. He held his hands up and said no celebration for me, but he took a really nice goal, nice take on the run, and a nice slotted finish as well. And it helped them to a really big win. And like you said, to put them top of the table. But also in that game, another youngster, an even younger player, 18-year-old Gustavo Gomez, a Gustavinho, I think they call him, scored as well. So he brought Gremio level with a kind of a bobbled finish, but a finish all the same. So I think he was up there as well as a player who we've mentioned him in the past as being on the radar of Liverpool, other big sides as well. So he got a goal. And showed up Cuyabano briefly, but Botafogo did come back to win it. So they were the 3 who were kind of in the running. But this morning, having seen what went on in Belo Horizonte, George, we had to give it to Estevão Willian, didn't we?
Yeah, like I said, reluctantly a little bit. We gave it to him a few weeks ago, if I seem to remember as well. Obviously, in light of his Chelsea move being pretty much sewn up over the the weekend just gone. Obviously, I think Palmeiras fans will get to enjoy him for at least until the end of the season. So he won't go to Chelsea until his 18th birthday, which I think is next July. So yeah, it was an unbelievable goal, this, James, and he's only 17. It was an unbelievable goal. Gets it on the right hand side. Shows the defender inside and curls the ball into the top corner. It's quite special. Anybody watching, get a look at that. But no, sorry, he's not 18 till April next year, so he's just turned 17, really. And it's amazing the things that he's doing. We know in Brazil they like to give opportunities to young players, and he's stepping up where Enrique's left, and obviously leaving himself at the end of the season. But he's maybe determined to leave Palmeiras with another title. And you've got to say, James, they're purring now a little bit. We were questioning about Ferreira's. Is it time for him to go? But they've stepped it up over the last few weeks, and now they're sitting in a good position, only a couple of places off Botafogo. They've got to be happy with that, the way they started the season. But he's a wonderful player, is Estevao. So Chelsea will reap the rewards of that one.
Yeah, for once it looks like good business by Chelsea. I mean, he's a heck of a player. To do that at 17, such confidence to take on his man and then bend it into the top corner. It's something you don't see a lot of, really, from a 17-year-old. And he looks a special talent. And, you can only imagine he's going to go from strength to strength, really, over the next kind of year. And like you say, Palmeiras will have this whole season to enjoy him and then half of the next one, really. So good days ahead for them, and 3 wins in a row, and they are looking good. 5th place, 2 points off the top. It is looking ominous for those ahead of them. They'll have hoped. I mean, as we do sometimes in England, when City start a little bit poorly, and you start to think, well, maybe they're not quite as good as they were in previous years, but the Palmeiras winning machine just kind of rolls on. So. And Estevao now is a huge part of that. Like you say, Enrique is gone. He's not going to play again for Palmeiras. And Luis Guilherme as well even has been plucked and gone to West Ham. So Estevao is the kind of the bright light there at the moment. And he's really put them on his back, and he's hauled them through a couple of games this season. He's been good in the Copa Libertadores. And yeah, he looks worth the money for Chelsea, unfortunately, from a Liverpool point of view anyway. But he's... a special talent. Like you said, we don't always want to give the awards to the same players, and we maybe want to highlight a few players that people maybe aren't quite as aware of, the Cuiabanos and even Gustavo Gomez. But when someone's as good as that, then you've just got to say fair play and a worthy winner of the award, even if it is on multiple occasions. I think he might be the first winner of multiple awards, actually. I don't think anybody else has done it. Yeah.
No, he hasn't. And like you said, with such confidence as a 17-year-old to go and do that, you can't give it to anybody but him. And obviously, I'm frustrated because it's against my team, and we didn't really play too well. James, down to 9 men come the end of the game. Hulk, the captain, sent off just 35 minutes in, and we'll the 1-0 down at that time, and just got worse. Couple of goals in a minute. The 60th minute, Puqueres gets a pen, and then a minute later, Esteve, he went and did that. So, the game is beyond them then, isn't it? And Lopez added a 4th in injury time. It's a first defeat for Galo of the season, but what a way to get your first defeat, James! A thumping at home.
Yeah, very disappointing. Like you said, first defeat of the season. No more unbeaten sides now in the Brasileirão, and a heck of a way, a real confidence kind of killer, that one, because they were ahead of them. They were a point behind them at the start of play. So within touching distance, they do still have a game in hand on them, to be fair. But yeah, a crushing kind of blow really for Galo, and that one, and it will take a lot of probably getting over, really. But yeah, disappointing for you, George. But there were a couple of nice goals in that, as well as Estevao. The first one, I can't remember who got it, was quite nice. But let's move on to goal of the round, because we are eating up time, and there is a number to go through. I mean, if people, I'm going to reel off a couple here just for people to, if they're kind of handy by YouTube, they can have a bit of a Google. So we've already covered a couple of them. There was a couple of nice ones in the Fluminense game, which one we're going to touch on, which has won it. I don't want to give away, but Ganso got a nice goal, a real blaster, a left-footed long ranger. Lucas Moura, as we touched on already, the two from Corinthians were really quite nice. Marcelo Hermes for Criciúma got one of those kind of low free kicks underneath the wall, kind of Ronaldinho-esque, which was really nice. Caio Alexandre for Bahia, another nice kind of a blaster, really. There was a crowded penalty area and he just kind of smashes it into the top corner. Ramon we've talked about as well, which was a nice kind of left-footed volley from the edge of these. So actually we have spoken about a lot of them already. I don't know if there are any more of yours that caught your eye, George, just before we announced the winner.
Not really, James. Like you said, there were just a few that were similar to each other, but you kind of had to say, yeah, that's a nice goal, you know what I mean? And there was a few, you know, I think you've covered them all really there. I think my personal favourite, James, was the Mosquito goal that we talked about already. I don't know quite really why, because it wasn't the best of the bunch. I did like that Ramon goal as well that we spoke about. I don't know. I just kind of like the way he kind of just swiveled and put it in the top corner. But obviously, like you said, didn't win it in the end.
No.
And, you know.
Well, the winner was Luis Fernando of Atletico Gio. And this is an absolute beast of a goal. It's straight from a corner. Somebody gets up to head it clear from Fluminense. And it lands, I'd say it lands right on the left foot of Luis Fernando, but it doesn't. He has to reach back and kind of curl it flush on the volley, and it blasts off his foot into the kind of the near corner. So he kind of wraps his foot around it and smashes it at the same time. And the keeper's got absolutely no chance. I mean, Fabio, he's 43, bless him. He's not getting up to that.
No, he was getting nowhere near it, James. It was as soon as I saw it, I thought, yeah, that's probably going to win it. And that was early on. Remember, that was pretty early on in the round, wasn't it? I think that was really early hours of Sunday morning here. So it was only the second game of the round. But even then, from then on, I thought, wow, this isn't going to be beaten. Obviously, it came close to be beaten. Some other people would have said it had been beaten, but for me, this was the best. This was the best of the bunch, and like we spoke about, it did give Gio a really, really important win, because they were looking towards the kind of relegation areas. Obviously, we know about Fluminense's poor form. They now slip into second bottom of the table. But for Gio, it was, it brings them out of the relegation zone, a couple of points above the relegation places, and kind of, makes them think that, we can do it in this division. Maybe we can do it, because a win at the Maracanã, I know this season, the way they started, people have been doing it, but the quality of that side doing it, it's a bit of a turn up.
Well, I'd say as well, I mean, that's the reasoning behind this goal, as good as it was. I mean, what stands it apart for me in terms of a goal itself is that you see these volley goals. I mean, some listeners will remember it reminded me a bit of Rooney against Newcastle. There's a famous one where he runs and hits on the volley. Shearer against Everton is a similar goal. But this was different because he has to reach back a little bit. It's not on his foot. He has to reach back. He's going back towards the ball on the edge of the area. But what stands it apart, just as aside from the good goal itself, is that it's a real turning point in the game. So Ganso had scored a great goal for Fluminense, and this was into the last 20 minutes of the game. This was 72 minutes that Fernando turns up. And it's a huge turning point. It probably plants that seed of doubt in Flu's heads again that, we're bottling it again. We're letting this go again. And for Gio, it probably gave him that spark that, look, that's an incredible goal. We can go on and do this. And he's and I think that's what made it such a special goal. And he's a good goal scorer, Fernando. He's been at Gio. He came through the youth academy with them, with Goianense. He's been away to Botafogo and he's played for Grêmio in the meantime, but he's now back at his boyhood club, and he got 9 goals in Serie B last year, which isn't too bad. The last time they were in Serie A with Gio, he got 9 goals as well, and that was in 2017. So he's kind of he's got form as a decent goal scorer, and you can see why with this one.
Yeah, absolutely, James. Yeah, it does seem a decent sort of goal scorer here. Didn't didn't really hit the heights at either Botafogo or Grêmio, but it seems to just him and Goianense just seem to go well together, don't they? And he seems to enjoy Serie B, doesn't he, as well? Obviously, they have been there as well. I think he made his debut in Serie B as well, and his first appearance for Gio in Serie B. So, yeah, if he continues to do that, people will knock on his door and say, hey, do you want to play in Europe potentially? Although into his sort of late 20s now, maybe it won't happen. But if he continues to score goals like that, then people are going to start sitting up and taking notice.
Yeah, well, it's a great goal, and he does deserve the goal of the round, I think, despite a healthy competition this week. But yeah, Gio Ventura doing a great job. They've only lost 2 in the last 6, actually, so this was kind of brewing in a way. And for Fluminense, it was, what a team to brew it against at the minute, because they are just all over the place. We spoke about Diniz the last few shows, and there's little excusing him at the minute. I saw a poll after the game of fans, whether he should go or not. I mean, surprisingly, so 69% said they would sack him, which leaves 31% which said they wouldn't. And having been on such a bad run as they have, that's 1 win still in 9 games, and they're into the relegation zone now. They're deep in it. And that's still not a terrible ratio. Then that shows you that Diniz he does have backing. He does still have backing, even though they are looking so poor. I think a lot of them recognise he is a kind of unique coach in some ways, and he can probably pull them out of it. But it's going to take a heck of a lot of patience from the owners. And I think, George, I just want to mention one thing from this game which really summed up their situation at the moment, and that was Felipe Melo, not known for his cool temperament, and he was subbed off in this game, which says a lot as it was. I mean, they were winning 1-0 when he got subbed off. But he was on the bench, and at the end of the game, I don't know what's provoked him, but he's just absolutely gone at the Atletico Gio press officer, and he's just launched himself at him after full time and just ploughed into him, straight through him, pushed him to the ground, and he got sent off, for what it was worth. He was already off the pitch. He was a substitute. He wasn't on the pitch, but it's been referred to, I think, the kind of the it's not a criminal court, it's the court for sanctions in terms of football sanctions. So he could get a 4 to 12 game ban, apparently. So he could miss up to 12 games through suspension for this kind of act of aggression against the press officer. So again, things go to worse.
Well, that's incredible. That's incredible. It's incredible, James. That, and he came into the starting 11, and at 40 years of age, it's just incredible. He swapped out, I think it was Marlon, in this match. I think Marlon came off and, didn't start the game in this game, and Melo was his replacement. And then, goes and does that, gets himself potentially a 2 or 3 month ban. I mean, you look like you're having a bit of trouble there, James. I mean, what's going on there?
Just a crumb or something in my throat. I can't get rid of it. Yeah, Melo, I just can't believe it. It just shocked me so
much. The kind of a really bad reaction to Fleet Melo pushing that press officer over.
Well, I am pressed myself, and it just hurts to see a fellow press officer, ploughed into that in that kind of.
Well, it would have been good. Well, to be fair, you'd have probably enjoyed to be that, because then you might have a bit of a story to tell, I suppose.
Well, yeah, I'm sure he wasn't too badly hurt, and I think he'll probably be dining out on that for a while, won't he? But anyway, I thought it summed up the malaise that Flu are in. They're in real trouble. And,
like I said, so it wasn't Marlon. It was Messias who came out for this one. Yeah. Marlon partnered Melo in the centre back positions. But yeah, they're in a real. I think they play again on Thursday, James. Really early Thursday, early hours of Thursday morning here. If they don't win that, then surely he's gone. You know what I mean? I mean, I know the fans can say what they want, but the fans don't run the club and make the decisions. And you've got to say that would be double figures into the season, and you'd be sitting in the relegation zone, potentially bottom of the table at that point. Victoria are picking up. You've got to say, when do you sort of pull the trigger and say that enough is enough?
Yeah, it feels like it's coming soon. It's definitely in the last throes of it. If you can't turn it around, you'd have thought so. In Cruzeiro away doesn't look like a particularly kind game as well for them. So, anyway, let's push on there. Flu, we've spoken a lot about them, and you do right to mention Vittoria there because they got a brilliant result against Inter to get themselves kind of up, and Carpini has done a good job over the last couple of games for them as well. Unbeaten in 3 now. Vittoria still rooted to the bottom, but like you said, level on points with Flu and just a point from safety themselves. So very good work for them and Tiago Carpini. But anyway, George, we're running out of time, so let's look ahead to the games. We haven't actually picked the rounds, the games of the round. So let's, if you run through them, and then we'll pick them on the spot as some kind of exciting bit for the listeners to hear. So if you run through, sorry, there's 2 rounds of fixtures, isn't there, to run through?
Yeah.
So just run through, flipping it. Yeah, run through them all, but do it quickly.
Okay. So Matchday 12 starts tomorrow. Late night football in England, 11 o'clock. Atletico Go against Criciúma. Also at the same time, Botafogo face Atletico Paranense. Inter Thursday morning, bang on midnight in the UK. Fortaleza kick off against Grêmio at the same time. Juventude face Vasco da Gama. Of course, that was for the table, isn't it? That one.
Yeah, wrong news.
Sao Paulo also host Cuiabá at midnight UK time. Like we spoke just now, Fluminense travel to Cruzeiro at 1:30 a.m. Also at the same time, Inter host Corinthians. Vittoria face Atletico Galo at 10:30 at night on Thursday, the 20th of June. Into Friday, then midnight Friday morning here, Flamengo host Bahia. And then 1:30 a.m. Palmeiras face Bragantino. Into then match day 13 on Saturday, the 22nd of June. Criciúma against Botafogo, Grêmio against Inter, and Cuiabá against GO. On Sunday, the 23rd of June, then is Vasco da Gama against Sao Paulo at 1:30 a.m. Then Sunday evening, Atletico Paranense, Corinthians, Bahia, Cruzeiro at 8 o'clock, and also Fluminense against Flamengo. That has a ring to it, James, that one. And then at 10:30, Galo against Fortaleza, Palmeiras against Juventude, and finish off the match day with Red Bull Bragantino against Vittoria, James.
Yeah, fantastic. So actually, I mean, we don't have any choice to make on this one. It's very straightforward. We've got 2 enormous games of the match week. So we've got Grêmio against Internacional, which is, of course, in a derby in Porto Alegre, the 2 big teams in the Rio Grande do Sul. Of course, it'll be emotionally charged much more than ever, even at the moment. So that'll be an enormous game. So I'll take that one, George, given my Inter background, then, and that leaves you the Rio derby, the Fla this time, which is another enormous game given Flu's circumstances and Flamengo's push for the title. I mean, if Flu have failed to beat Cruzeiro, then this could be the nail in Deniz's coffin, as harsh as that might seem.
I don't think it is harsh, James, to be honest with you. They've had a terrible time. And like we said, if they don't beat Cruzeiro on Thursday morning, in match day 12, then, you've got to say it'd be curtains for him if it hasn't been already, if they don't beat Flamengo, because, yeah, it's an incredible derby, that game. you want to win. If they don't win, it could well be bottom of the table, and Flamengo could be top.
Yeah, well, I meant harsh in the sense that a loss against Flamengo wouldn't necessarily be an awful result, but given the circumstances, you would feel that would be a symptomatic and a kind of a symbolic ending for Diniz in many ways. But we'll see, he might turn it around.
True.
Anyway, George, if you just want to, so that'll be the two games we look at, and two enormous games to get our teeth into. That'll be enjoyable. But yeah, let's just finish on the table. And I forgot about the table, and I'll get the right music on this time. And if you just run through that, and then we'll call it a night.
Yeah, it's just worth saying, James, that like this time or whenever it was, where we've got two going on before we obviously meet again. We're just going to skirt over basically match day 12 and look heavily on match day 13 next week. So, as always, we look towards the most recent match day, don't we? So that's just to clear that up.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, so we'll just run for the results of the previous one and then touch on the next one in more detail.
Yeah, that's right. So if we're looking at the table, then top of the table is Botafogo on 19 points. A point behind them in second is Flamengo on 18, also on 18. And incredibly, James doing incredibly well still, is Bahia. Into fourth then is Atletico Paranense on 17. Also rising this week on 17 points also is Palmeiras in fifth. In sixth position is Sao Paulo on 15. Also on 15 points, James, is RB Bragantino in seventh. Eighth then is Cruzeiro on 14. Ninth is Galo on 13. 10th is Inter on 11. Into 11th is Juventude on 10 points. Fortaleza join them on 10 points in 12th. 13th position, Atletico GO on 8 points. 7 points from 14th to 16th place, James, it goes Cuiabá, Vasco da Gama, and then sitting a place above the relegation zone is Corinthians, also on 7 points. In the relegation zone, all 4 teams have 6 points. It goes Grêmio in 17th, 18th is Kuchuma, 19th, like we've covered heavily there, is Fluminense, and propping up the table is Vitória.
Yeah, but in good form, Vitória, and there's 3 really big teams down there. Corinthians just above the zone, Grêmio and Flu in trouble, and Vasco just above as well. So some big teams in trouble, but the top of the table starting to get a bit of a familiar feel to it, with Bahia kind of sneaking in there as well. But yeah, it's all looking good, and 2 big match days, like you said, George, coming up before we do meet again. 2 massive derbies to get our teeth into, so we're going to enjoy that, aren't we? So thank you everybody for listening to another episode of Talking Brazil Ball. I hope you've all enjoyed it, and enjoy the 2 match weeks, George, and we'll reconvene next week.
I do, James. Yeah, enjoy it. It'll be a good one.
It certainly will.
That tradition feels so alive. Summer rhythms flame with a thrive. Go, 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 oh, shout it aloud. In the summer sun, we're a summer loving crowd. Talking Brazil ball, we're breaking it down. Bringing the passion from every town. Let the world be filled with love tonight. Sway to the beat, make you feel so right. Summer, summer vibes, we're dancing in the heat. Go, go, go. Can't be beat, talking Brazil, go spreading love in every way. In the sound of paradise, we're here to stay.